Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Best Darn Everything, our sub show, our bi-weekly alternative show to our weekly Simpsons podcast, where we take a break about talking about The Simpsons to talk about other stuff that we enjoy. And today, your co-host with the most and I are talking about a very special character to both of us, somebody that we've both met through the magic of television, not too long ago, and has made a big impact in our lives. So we're here to talk about Ted Lasso, and of course, joining me as always, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I have been looking forward to talking about Ted Lasso, man. I feel like it's a very, very interesting yet different television show that we'll get into, and I'm sorry, man. I got to go ahead and apologize here. They are literally tearing up our street right now. And in my ear, all I hear is freaking construction equipment. So
you're saying my voice is like construction equipment to you?
Like a saw or the little thing that tears up the ground that I'm too tired to remember the name of right now. The drill thingy mabobber.
Yeah, that's what they call it in the field. You clearly exactly. Worked in construction.
Many, many a time. So yes, much like our show, my street is constantly being worked on. So,
yeah. Very good.
Oh, yeah. Throw it back to Miles. The man, the myth. He wishes he was Coach Beard. It's that guy.
Dude, I could not grow that beard with all of the time and all of Ted Lasso's enthusiasm. Like, it just wouldn't happen for me. But I do love that character, honestly. I love Coach Beard a lot. Guys, we're talking about Ted Lasso, which is both a character and a TV show, oddly enough, produced by Apple TV, which feels weird. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't know why, but it just seems like they're such like, I don't know, they're known for being like such a heartless company. And Ted Lasso is filled with heart, much like that other show we often talk about, but in a very different way. Ted Lasso actually is a character that Jason Sudeikis came up with I want to say it was like a TV promo spot during the Premier League, which is like a big deal if you're a soccer fan. So I'm pretty much outing myself right now that I know almost nothing about soccer. I know that instead of teams, they're called clubs. I know that they call it football there.
And outside of the U.S.
Yeah. And that's about it. Now, I know that I was like really good at chasing the ball when I played when I was 4.
I think I remember those ads back in 2013 too, when because they did it as a bit on TV. It literally was just an ad that played, and it was like, that's kind of funny. And then it kind of like ruined my brain when the show came out, because I was like, wait, hasn't this been on for a while? That's a show. And then you realize, oh no, they're just maybe I just misremembered the past. I don't know, but no, they really did have those ads running way back when.
So I don't remember those ads at all. I don't know that I ever saw them, to be honest. I was one of those kind of late adopters to the first season of Ted Lasso. I kept hearing the buzz, kept hearing how great it is. I like Jason Sudeikis in general. I tend to enjoy his work. So like it had everything going for it, other than, having to find a way to log into an Apple account, but as an Android user. But when I finally did like sink into it, I was immediately hooked and like immediately just binge watched the entire series. And now I'm having to watch season 2 the old fashioned way, where I'm like caught up and have to wait a week in between episodes, which honestly, we could probably do an entire podcast just talking about the pros and cons of like old school TV versus new school TV, and like do some old man yelling at cloud moments for sure. But Ted Lasso, just I guess to lay it out in case anybody is completely unfamiliar. Richie, how would you just like as like your pitch? What would your pitch of Ted Lasso be?
Ooh, I get to do a pitch. All right, so we're gonna take a stand-up comedian who's known for being kind of sarcastic, super sarcastic in every other role he's ever been in, but he's not going to be super sarcastic at all, really. He's going to be a super nice, genuine guy. And instead of being a football coach that his character's been the whole career, he's going to be a football coach, but with his feet, and overseas in England, where nobody can understand him, and he can't stand anybody, or he can't understand anybody else.
Which, I mean, to be fair, he can they both speak English. It's just like the nuances of the language. It's not like he's put into a country where they can speak.
This isn't your pitch, Miles, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry. Pitch. Continue. My bad. Yeah,
that's basically it.
That was sorry to cut you off at the climax. That's the worst. So I would add to that too, just like at the
also Roy Kent.
Roy Kent is great. We're definitely talking about Roy Kent and the writer that portrays him. But Ted Lasso at the end of the day is like just this really positive, uplifting, he's like the type of football coach you would hope that like your kids had as a peewee level coach or whatever. Like he's like going to teach you something, make you a better person through the experience of the sport. And he's basically brought to England as more or less an act of sabotage, because there's a soccer club in England.
Spoiler, by the way.
Oh, we're gonna spoil a lot of things, I assume. Sorry.
Do we ever not spoil stuff that we talk about?
No, I'm spoiling like the first episode of a show that's been out for like 4 years, I think, or 2 years. I don't know. I'm in episode 1 territory here. I'm spoiling the first 5 minutes of the show if you turn it on. But basically, this soccer team is owned by a woman who just went through a divorce. It used to be the husband's team, now it's the wife's team. And she actually wants them to lose. Like she doesn't want them to do well. She's trying to actively make bad choices. So she thinks it'd be a good idea to bring this like American football coach with a very positive reputation, I guess, and attitude over to coach her club, knowing that he doesn't know a thing about soccer or, actual football, if you will.
Yeah. And the thing that Ted Lasso does so well is that you like basically every character on the show, and they kind of make the ex-wife to be out a villain almost in the first episode or so, but then they start humanizing her, and like when you actually get to see her side of the story and everything and what she's been through, like she's basically trying to ruin the thing that her husband loved because he was such a jackass. And they do a good job of humanizing everybody in this show for the most. There's like maybe one character that you're like, I don't really care for him, but by season 2 you're like, well, I want to see him integrated and helping everybody else at least. And I think there's definitely something to that. And like, is her name Vanessa? I forgot. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the owner now. But
Rebecca.
She's the shame lady from Game of Thrones for those who need a.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Reference. But yeah, like they do a good job of like making you want to see her do well, especially by season 2 for sure. But yeah, I was talking about this I got somebody at work hooked on the show, and I thought they would like slowly watch it. And like they came back from a weekend and they're like, dude, I'm all caught up. I love this show. This show is incredible. And I want to go on all these tangents right now, and I'm trying to stay focused, but like
it's going to be hard. I already have everything you're saying is making you want to like address so many parts of the show.
Yeah. It's just like they do a good job of humanizing everybody for the most part, which I very much enjoy. Like it's nice getting to root for people. And I think that's the heart that you're talking about of Ted Lasso, is that most shows do like the cliffhanger stuff or the drama stuff, or it's like, oh, this is a twist and we'll talk about it next week. And there's hints of that in Ted Lasso episodes. But I feel like the reason I come back to it every week is because it's actually quite an uplifting show. Like the show makes you feel good, and in a way it makes you want to be a better person because of how nice Ted Lasso is. And that's the big draw to it. And in this day and age and all the crap we're going through in the world, having a show that's literally there just to make you feel good is like a very different feeling. And like, it's almost like we forgot what that's like. And I honestly think that's what sucks people into the show, is how positive it is.
It's very uplifting. I mean, there's no doubt that the character is uplifting as a positive person. And I agree with you overall. I think it's a show that like every time you tune into that show, you feel even though there are some very dark moments and some depressing moments that Ted goes through in his personal life that we'll talk to a little bit. that almost makes it more powerful of a message, because you see that Ted isn't living like some fantasy, like, I don't know, Disney life or anything like that. He's got real problems. He's going through a divorce. He's not able to see his kid as much as he likes to. He's literally got an ocean between him and any family that he's ever known. But yet, even through all that adversity, he's always able to keep a positive outlook. And your point of the characters, like wanting to root for all of them, like everybody has a real story, and they feel like real people, and real people struggle with things a lot, and you don't always like everybody. Like there are times where you're annoyed by somebody, or you're angry with somebody, but it doesn't take away with you necessarily liking them less as a character. And there's a lot of there's so many cases of redemption in this show, but like not in like an in your face, like ridiculous sort of way, but doing some full scale spoilers just to warn everybody, like thinking about the character of Rebecca, who you mentioned, like when in the most recent, or like 2 episodes ago of season 2, whenever you see this, it's the Christmas episode I'm going to be referring to in season 2. We see Ted Lasso at possibly one of his darkest moments, where we see him where he looks like, man, he is not the normal positive outlook on life type of guy that we're used to. And it's actually Rebecca that comes around full circle and basically saves him from a at least day of depression, if not possibly a spiral. You never know in those situations. But regardless, it's Rebecca, the original villain, as you put it, like, and completely right. She was painted to be that way. But she's a very redeemable character, and somebody that you actually really actively start to root for. I think another great example of that, before we get into some of the, I know we really want to talk about Roy Kent and the actor and writer that plays him, but because you were talking about that redemption aspect so much, or just like the rooting for people so much, Juno Temple is the actress. She plays the character Keely Jones. Keely Jones, by every definition of like what I would like value in a person in the first season, she doesn't have it. She's essentially a Kim Kardashian type. It seems that she's just trying to essentially leech fame off of soccer players through her sex appeal. And if you're like simple goal, if like at the end of the day that's your only goal, I don't necessarily know that that's a respectable trait. Now, I'm not trying to by any means say that, like modeling or anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to necessarily insult Kim Kardashian, especially with what I'm going to say. Basically, as that character develops, we start to see that she actually does have a mind for business. And granted, she ends up in the position that she's in because she has very wealthy friends who she was able to network and position herself through with her essentially socialite lifestyle. But Keely, like, her character is just so sweet and like helpful, and like I love the when she does go around and she stops being so much of like a just like Kim Kardashian, like, when do I drop the photo that breaks the internet type, to like actually being like more actively involved in the team. There's a scene where she's trying to help some of the other players, the lesser known players, the ones that aren't necessarily as big of a star. She gets this guy from Nigeria, ad that basically the parent company of that ad, the people that own that airline that he did an ad for, turns out they're doing a lot of terrible things to Nigeria. I really like the storyline where she actually stands up and fights, even though like it would be super easy of her just to be like, dude, just take the picture, shut up and take the money. She recognizes that that's like an important cause for him, and therefore immediately advocates for him on the team as well.
I thought that was a really, really good episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously that you can draw correlations to stuff going on even in the sports world in real life right now. But like, I really enjoyed that episode because it's with that character too. He's been a little bit more of the focal point in this season, especially before Jamie Tart came back.
Do 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 do.
But I like that was such a like that moment when he got the text from his father. He was like, I can't believe I'm so disappointed in you. I can't believe you would stand behind this company with everything they're doing. It was just like, oh crap. And then getting the moment where they all were like taping their shirts up and speaking up. I was like, man, if certain people watch the show, it'll either go right over their heads or they're going to get pissed off because they're going to take it too personally. But I was like, but I very much enjoyed that episode and enjoyed that moment. And I'm glad the show was drawing correlations to real life.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's been one of my favorite episodes and storylines. I was actually just talking to somebody, I hope that they do continue this storyline. You mentioned the taping up of the jerseys. I hope that that's something that we're going to continue to see throughout the like rest of the season, and potentially could end up becoming a foil of some sorts, as maybe that sponsor is going to be upset in the future and cause problems for the team. I'm worried though, based on like the last couple of episodes, I haven't noticed there's been tape on the jerseys and it hasn't really been acknowledged. So it would kind of bum me out a little bit if they just kind of like let that storyline go. I hope that we see more of that coming back into play, because I thought that was such like a good, powerful storyline. It would be interesting to let it run for more than just one episode.
Or just get rid of the sponsor and take it off the jersey altogether. I mean, I honestly was like, I would like an AFC Richmond jersey just to wear around and pretend like you're a football fan when really it's just you're a Ted Lasso fan. But I don't want to buy one.
But we both like to drink, so that counts for something.
There you go. I'm not going to buy one if it's got Dubai Air sponsorship on the cover. That's.
I want one with the tape across it.
There you go. It's and speaking of football, one of the best parts in my mind of the show is that the actual sport is the least important part of the show. And it's like, I like seeing the soccer stuff a little bit, like because of the banter between everybody, but them winning is like, I want to see them win, but at the end of the day, I don't care if they win, which is a really weird feeling, because I like sports. So like, I want to see the people you like doing well, but like, it speaks volumes about the writing and the points of the episodes that like, at the end of the day, you just don't care if they win or not. Like, it's kind of almost charming that they're not winning right now.
Yeah, I mean, winning and losing is part of the show, obviously. Like that, I think, like, sometimes the thing that forces some of the narrative is like, their losing streak or their tied streak or whatever it is. They've got to make changes to start winning games. But I agree with you in that it doesn't have that same sense that like most sports movies have, that you're like constantly like on the edge of your seat. They're going to win, but you still are like there with it and it matters. This, it's just, you're so invested in the individual characters while the soccer's happening in the background.
It reminds me of the quote in We Are Marshall when Matthew
I just rewatched that movie like literally maybe 2 weeks ago.
Nice. Yeah. But when he's in the church talking to what's his face from Lost, and he said, he does
Matthew
that whole
Fox, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. I thought they were both Matthews, but he talks about like, winning will matter again one day in the future, but for right now, there's more important things. That's basically, I'm paraphrasing everything.
But that's the gist of it for sure. Yeah, you got to get to a point where winning is the most important thing. Yeah.
Right. But I feel like that's kind of the mantra of Ted Lasso. It's like he is literally there to make these men better people, and that is way more important.
You said men as in the players. I agree, but expanding it to even the people in the town around the club, like he's
owner.
Yeah, the owner, the staff, like Keeley, who we just talked about. Like he has a direct influence on just about everybody that is there, and Ted Lasso too, as the character, he's one of those people that like he's over the top, but he's also very believable. And that
it takes an episode, I feel like, for you to buy in. I think it takes a full episode, because at first you're like, oh man, is this a trick? Like I literally was like, this dude's gonna bust out with some nasty sarcasm at one point because I knew very little about the show other than he was coaching overseas. But I was like, this seems like over the top and too much. But then by the start of the second episode, you're like, no, this dude's just super nice. Okay, Here we go.
Yeah, believable is absolutely at the heart of what it is. It's so grounded. Like the show, every character in the show is very believable. Somebody that you could know in real life, and I think that's why, oddly enough, as much as I enjoyed the Christmas episode in season 2, I actually remember thinking when I watched it, just the little hints of the over the top like magic of Christmas and aspects of that they did. Just like I guess that Christmas episode more than any other episode to me pushed the bounds of like disbelief essentially. And I remember getting kind of like laughing at myself a little bit because I was frustrated with a show for not being as grounded as it normally was during a Christmas episode when it was still very like a solid episode. Like I still enjoyed it a lot, but there's like this part of me that's like, man, they're almost like abusing like the rules that they put in place to just how like normal life this really is, other than the fact that they call like cookies biscuits or whatever.
See, honestly, I was thinking I might add that into my like I'm gonna watch this during Christmas time.
100% love again. I know I sound contradictory because I very much enjoyed the episode. It was just like this weird dichotomy of like, but it's like more absurd than the rest of the show has been so far.
Well, and like you talked about Rebecca kind of saving Ted earlier too. She saved him in the to keep it grounded. She saved him not in some absurdist way. She saved him in a Ted Lasso way. It wasn't, hey, we're gonna go out and spend all this money and do all this crap. It was, we're gonna do something that Ted would like to do. So like to bring it back to where it did have a little bit of grounding in it, and it was something where they were going and being super nice to children that weren't getting toys, and it was like, yeah, it gets a little cheesy at the end with all the
that was all it was. It's just the singing stuff at the end. But it's Christmas. Who cares?
It wasn't the characters that you wouldn't see doing that. Like Coach Beard wasn't there. Jamie Tart wasn't there. The Doctor, the new character in season 2 they weren't there at all. So
the Doctor is an interesting addition to the second season.
Yeah, very much so.
So basically in season 2, they've added a sports psychologist to the mix just to help with they're not losing. They're actually on a tied streak. And he's in the
beginning of season 2.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God. There was one moment in the beginning of season 2 that I'm still struggling with. I need to talk to the team doctor about. I love the character so much. The soccer is life guy. Which for what it's worth, that character he was actually a soccer player that retired to pursue acting and ended up getting that role, which is like the perfect role for him.
Way to break through.
Also, there's a funny thing I read on IMDb that's kind of in tune with that. Jason Sudeikis actually was doing an interview, and he talked about how Ted Lasso's situation paralleled his own real life situation at the time, because when they were developing that show, or when he was deciding to do that show, he was actually going through a pretty bad breakup with Olivia Wilde. And just like Ted Lasso is going through a divorce, separated across the ocean from his, wife, Jason Sudeikis was going through this breakup with Olivia Wilde, and then he moved to England to film the show. So like it was kind of this weird parallel that was like art reflecting life sort of thing.
It is very interesting. That could be kind of cathartic in a way, and
I could definitely see that as the case. I also read, I thought this was just funny moment too, and since I mentioned the cookie and the biscuits thing, one of the endearing traits we see from Ted Lasso is his like refusal almost to a flaw, but not. Like he rides that line perfectly of like if he senses you're not happy or not having a good day or whatever, he takes that extra step just to like try to make that personal connection with you. And when he first gets on the team, as we talked about, he was brought there essentially to sabotage. He was never meant to actually be part of the team. So Rebecca, the boss lady, is pretty cold to him. And he takes it upon himself to bring her like these biscuits that he basically, I'm not, you know what? I'm going to let that be a surprise for you. The biscuit thing's sweet. So I won't ruin too much of it, but she basically is gifted biscuits every day that she becomes very fond of and wants to find out where he gets them. And it becomes a way that they connect. Well, the actress that plays Rebecca is named Hannah Waddingham, and she actually did an interview where she talked about those biscuits that she would have to eat on set. And apparently, because they were basically just a prop, the prop department didn't really put a whole lot of effort into making them taste good. And she said that they were probably the worst shortcake or shortbread biscuits she's had in her entire life. And even jokingly said that eating those and referring to them as delicious is the greatest acting of her life. Which I thought was pretty fun.
That's pretty dang funny.
You also mentioned a great side character who we've kind of skirted around a few times now, and I think that we should get a nice tight shave on. It's Coach Beard, played by Brendan Hunt, who is apparently another guy like Jason Sudeikis with an improv background, which totally makes sense, based especially on the two's interactions with each other. Because Coach Beard is basically Ted's right-hand man, the assistant coach, and they are like they're a team, essentially. They're a dynamic duo of coaching, and they
balance each other out
very, very well. And they together are switching from being American football coaches to football or soccer coaches.
The thing I like about Coach Beard's character is the way that he banters with Ted Lasso. If you actually listen to their dialogue when they're going back and forth, that's where all the really
dad
good
joke, dad joke crazy, which I know you're gonna love.
But they fight like this is gonna be one of those shows where you go back and rewatch it and you're like, I didn't catch that the first time I saw this. And
agreed.
They have a lot of fast banter at times where it's like very dad joke-esque, but like still really, really clever in a way.
It's really great wordplay, and they almost communicate with each other in metaphors.
Exactly, and you're starting to see a little bit of that too, like when the soccer players in a recent episode were talking about Kate's and they're like, oh, like Beckinsale, somebody else, and they're like they're firing super fast now, and it's branching off into other characters now, which I like to see that it's kind of impacting the influence that Ted's had on the team almost in a way.
It's like literally contagious. Yeah, 100%.
The dialogue, the writing, like is very, very good, especially when Coach Beard's talking.
One of the more recent episodes, they had this running gag where they were referencing romantic comedies because I'll spoil the beginning of this. Basically, Ted Lasso. That was the most recent one. It may have been, yeah. The Ted Lasso basically announces that he's a communist to his team, but then he follows up with, I'm a rom-communist. So he's really into romantic comedies. And this just sets off this like entire like improv style game through the entire episode where they are just constantly referencing romantic comedies at one another. And like Coach Beard, it just works because Ted Lasso is kind of a big, loud, out there character, and Coach Beard is very stoic. He always has his hat, his clipboard, his whistle, and like he's the type of dude that just kind of sits in the background and says the one-liner and never like completely dry. And that bounces and plays off of so well with like the more energetic Ted Lasso energy.
I must say, in that episode, probably the part that I enjoyed the most because it was so weird and off-putting, but like it was good in the way, is the long walk from Roy Kent to get to the stadium and like his leg hurting and like everything about that. It just went on a little too long, and I was like, I don't know why I'm enjoying this so much, but I am.
It was fun. We're getting there. We're talking about him next. I'm going to shout out the character of Nate, who I just think needs to be mentioned next to Coach Beard. He's got such a great journey going from like the Kit Man, I think is what he's called, which is like basically the water boy, according to this show. And as his character progresses, he's now an actual like member of the coaching staff, which is really kind of fun to see. And just like the way that like he's commanded more respect as he goes along, sometimes quite a lot more depending on the episode. But that's another character that's grown a lot.
He's getting a little too cocky though. He's been very, very cocky this season.
Well, he got checked. He got checked in this last one, so I think that's been part of it. So
he hopefully is coming back down to earth a little bit there. But yeah, it's seeing him get a little bit of his due respect is great. It's something that like some of the little interactions between people, like, again, I know keep bringing them up, but at the end of the most recent episode, when Roy Kent joins them on the field, I love it when like he walks by the coaches and he says to Ted, Ted says like, coach, and he walks by, and when he walks by Coach Beard, he taps him on the chest. And I thought that was such a sweet moment. Like nothing was said. It was very Coach Beard, but Roy Kent just tapped him on the chest, like, it's good to see you. And
Yeah.
but then he stands next to Nate, and the way Nate looks, he's
Well,
kind
and
of
the
like,
music, dude, they did such a good job with the music in that scene. Because Nate gets this like, oh my God expression on his face. But then
what
like
does this mean for
you
us?
get
Kind of
almost
thing.
like Psycho. Like I don't mean like he's a psycho. I mean like the film Psycho, the score from that film, like where you get like the like screeching noises and like the unsettling pitches happening in the background.
Yeah.
Like that's what happens to the music when Roy Kent walks by him. So like that's gonna be such a great dynamic. I'm excited for the next episode to see where they go with that. But Roy Kent in general has been one of the best characters on the show. I think it's hard to like overshadow Ted Lasso to some extent, but at the same time, you already mentioned it. This show does such a good job of making you care about all of the characters, even lesser important ones like Higgins, who is like basically the boss's bitch man. Really, that's at the end of the day. But like, you even care about him to an extent.
He's in on the banter with all the guys too now, which like I really enjoy those moments too. Like they've done a good job of making you like him a whole lot. So
and fun fact to warm your little heart next time you watch the Christmas episode this December, his wife on the show is his actual wife in real life as well. They're both actors and they're married to each other.
I love that scene when they're pretending to get the guns ready. Danny Rojas and the other player, and he's like, "It's fun serving with you," and then the kids annihilate them and they just fall over.
Yeah, that is a really episode, and just like the idea that like that's their tradition, they run out of space because so many people come and they love it. Like I
remember though, Miles didn't like this episode at all.
I didn't even say that at all, you bastard. You know what? We're talking about soccer, so you're a cunt for that one, Richie.
You mean a wanker?
Whatever they say over there in the UK. But Brett Goldstein is the actor that plays Roy Kent. But before he played Roy Kent, he wrote for Roy Kent because Brett Goldstein got his start with the show as a writer on Ted Lasso before it was even in production. And as a writer on the show, he fell in love with the Roy Kent character. And I just sent you an article about this, and now I'm struggling to find it, of course. But I believe that the character that Roy Kent is based off of is actually a real-life Irish footballer named Roy Keane. Here, I got it. Roy Keane played from in the Premier League from 1992 to 2006. And he basically had a persona very similar to Roy Kent, who we see on Ted Lasso. He's very gruff. He was a little bit rough around the edges. He didn't hold his tongue back at all whenever he was being interviewed. He'd often use a lot of language at certain people that was less than polite, we'll say. And this English guy, Brett Goldstein, who grew up a soccer fan, watching Roy Keane as he's writing this character, he's like, I could do this. And he actually took it upon himself to basically record himself doing some auditions, some of the scenes that he had written, mind you, for this character. And he actually filmed himself and sent it to the producers and to Jason Sudeikis. And they immediately were like, yeah, that's you. You got it.
And well, he already seemed to build that relationship with Jason too, because in the article you sent it talked about how he was supposed to be in a meeting with Jason to see how it would work out from a writing standpoint.
Right.
And they expected it to be like 10 minutes. And apparently they were on Zoom or something for hours.
Hours is bullshitting. Yeah.
And Brett just fell in love with the whole concept and idea of the show. So it's something that it sounds like he's been very passionate about since the inception of the show. So like, I mean, you like to see that. And it seems like the older we get, when we're young, they teach you, do everything the way they tell you to, pay your dues, pay your respects. And eventually you'll get a little bit here and there, you'll get what you want. But it seems like the more we dive into this kind of stuff, at least from like a film and television standpoint, the more it's like, it's the people that go out there and take chances and
you've got to take it. Yeah. You can't.
This dude literally just decided to send in his own audition tapes. And heck, I don't know who knew if he had it. Well, I mean, I assume he had an agent since he's a writer, but like literally sent his own audition tapes and he got the part. So, I mean, sometimes you got to take that leap.
100%.
What it's done.
And his character is just so interesting. So kind of the dynamic that we see that creates a lot of the tension in season 1 is Roy Kent, this aging but world-renowned soccer star, is kind of on this team where he's past his prime. We'll say this is not his star days anymore, and he has to deal with this young up and comer named Jamie Tart, who is just really an asshole. Like, I mean, just self-centered. Everything revolves around him, and really to the detriment of the entire team, to the point that when he makes a return in season 2, it's like a big deal because it's actually upsetting a lot of the other players. So just the fact that these are both believable tropes, but again, both characters are more than just that. They're not, it's not just Roy Kent, the gruff and, you know, kind of ornery old timer, and this young punk. They're both real people. They're both like characters that you actually see have flaws and feelings, and you root for them to like improve in their own perspective ways.
In season 1, you feel like you know everything that's going to happen because Ted's given him the book that's a reflection on leadership, and even he's making comments. He's like, I know what you're trying to do. Like, it's just, you feel like, you know, you're like, oh man, I know the route that these sports tropes take, but I still want to see what happens here. But like, it's kind of what made me start binge watching. I think I watched season 1, maybe one episode once, and then I watched the rest the next day, or I watched the first season incredibly fast. And I remember it was the moment I realized, I'm definitely hooked on this, was the dinner one, where the charity event one, when Roy Kent was at the table talking something, and he was mouthing off to the bartender or something, but he was doing it in such a clever way, and I was like, and I realized I was rooting for him, even though he was the way he was. I was like, man, like, I really like the show. That's when it hit me like that, where I was like, I was watching it, but I was already hooked on it, and I didn't quite know, but it was that moment, that episode, like that whole episode, I thought was great episode, which we're going to say that pretty much about every episode at this point, because there's not that many.
There's only 14 episodes out currently. Is that right? 10 in the first season and 4 for the new season.
We might have had 5 on the new one. I don't know, but that episode was just so well-rounded all around, with everything going on there. And that's when you meet Rebecca's ex-husband, and he's trying to be charming, but Ted kind of sees right through it immediately and helps her out at the end. But yeah, like the character of Roy Kent is definitely, I would say, the fan favorite for everybody right now. Like, everyone comments on everything he says, because he basically is, in a roundabout way to bring this back to The Simpsons, he is the Lisa Simpson of the show. And what I mean by that is,
fascinating.
He is the one that says what everyone is thinking. Like, Lisa's the one on The Simpsons where it's like she points out, well, why are we doing it like this? Why are we doing like this? Roy Kent's
the one that does that. They just have a very different vocabulary.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
although it'd be great to see Lisa talk like that.
That would be fun, actually. That'd be really fun. Actually, when I was trying to find like a graphic for this podcast to put it up, I was struggling a little bit, and I got to laughing a lot because I basically just started looking for Ned Flanders as a football coach, and I was like, that could almost be the pitch for this show. Like, that could have been the pitch meeting. Like, when they walked in, they're like, yeah, we got Jason Sudeikis. He's basically Ned Flanders as a soccer coach, and they're like, yeah, we'd watch that.
Done.
Oh man. So I guess the only other thing I really had on my notes of what I wanted to talk about is I have seen not a lot, but a little bit. And I think this is just how fan bases like to be. But I have, of course, seen some people on Reddit talking about how season 2 just isn't bringing it like season 1 did. And this show is already dying and blah, blah, blah. What was that word you used earlier? That's how I feel about that. But regardless, what do you think about that? Like, what do you feel like season 2 is stronger, as strong? Like, do you feel like they're in a good place to continue this show for a long time? Or is this something that we're already having, reduced returns on?
I think the issue everyone's having is that in season 1, you had a lot more tension. You had the stuff going on with Rebecca where she was trying to sabotage Ted, and you were like, oh man, how many seasons is going to play out? But they resolved that in the first season. You've got the whole Roy Kent versus Jamie Tart thing in the first season, and that resolves itself by the end. And honestly, you thought Jamie was going to turn a corner because he actually uses Nate's play and actually makes the pass at the end of season 1 that beats AFC Richmond. So you're like, okay, he actually learned something. And which, by the way, that getting the note from Ted Lasso after his dad was screaming at him about how he's terrible because he passed, and Ted gave him that note that said that was a great pass or way to go. Like, I thought that was going to change his character, but then season 2 comes along and he's on the reality show, and Roy Kent's going over to the old ladies to watch it. Like, fantastic. I've really enjoyed season 2 so far. To answer your question, I'm going on a tangent here. I feel like there's less opposing forces because Ted's already, like, he won over the freaking the writers in the town too, which was very much a very great episode in the first season as well. And I just, that's what I'm talking about. I come back each week because the show makes me feel good. This show might be my favorite show right now of like stuff that comes out that's brand new. Like,
sure,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's like, of currently released shows. This is definitely high on my list. Yeah. I would agree with you.
I make sure I watch it when I get home from work because I work nights. So like the new episode comes out Friday morning. When I get off Thursday night, Friday morning, I come home and I usually go straight to sleep. But I stay up to watch Ted Lasso before I go to bed because I can't wait to watch the next episode. I just think it's a lot of fun.
That's completely fair. I agree that so far I think season 2 has been very strong. I do admit that I think that with a character like Ted, it does become maybe there are going to be diminishing returns in the future. Maybe this is the type of show that they should have like a set ending point in mind and like be actively getting there. Because I do think that at a certain point, like you said, Ted's already won over the sports writers in the town. He's won over the fans that have all called him wanker time and time again. Even the ones that still call him wanker, like him when they do it.
Mm-hmm. So which, that's just a funny dynamic right there to begin with.
Yeah, of course that is. But I do think that eventually, like this season they added the sports psychologist, and I think that's going to be really. I still think that has a lot of legs.
Force this season, like you're waiting for the moment where Ted breaks down and goes to talk to her because you know he's got all this baggage going on.
Because her door's over. Her door's always open, but if that's the case, what's the point of even having a door? I'm sorry, I love that scene with them.
Well, but like also the most recent episode, he said that he was going to fix the like leader of their team right now because you got to fix the big dog. You can't let the psychologist do it. I thought that was going to have like terrible results where the player still needed to go to her, but it didn't. He actually fixed the lead player by bringing in Roy. And I'm wondering if that's a little bit of the dynamic of him bringing in Roy too, was him trying to help get the team going. And like, he is doing everything he can to avoid going and talking to that woman about himself, which that's kind of the Ted Lasso downfall, so to speak, is he's always nice, but can being overly nice actually be detrimental to yourself?
Hurricane Nettie, dude. Hurricane Nettie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, no, I seeing more and more parallels in Ned Flanders and Ted Lasso as I think about it. I would say Ted Lasso is Flanders if you pulled the religion out of him. Like, I'm not saying that Ted Lasso has no religion. It's not really necessarily stated that I know of.
Story, really.
But he's definitely not overtly Christian like Ned Flanders is. He's just like an overtly nice guy.
Believe.
Yeah, I love that too. There's so many just little things about this show. One thing I would definitely say is if you have not seen this show and you've listened to 45 minutes of us talking about it, like, check it out. It's really good. I really like the writing. I really like the characters, the acting. I don't have any major complaints about it in any place other than concern that eventually they're gonna it's gonna be awkward. They're like, who can we add this season to make it uncomfortable for Ted? Like, I think at a certain point that could happen, but at this point we have not gotten there.
Yeah, even though it's starring a couple Americans, they've taken the British route where it's been kind of like everything is getting resolved super fast. It's supposed to be all the opposing forces get resolved super fast. So, I mean, even like the Keeley Roy Kent stuff, like they got together at the end of season 1. So what are they going to do to spice that up later? Are they going to have Jamie try to sneak his way back in? And
I mean, they've teased at that a little bit, where it seems like Jamie Jamie is definitely still interested in Keeley. I think Keeley has moved past Jamie,
and I think the fan base would destroy her character if she did something to Roy Kent at this moment. Anything bad that happens to Roy Kent is going to piss off the entire world
on her for sure,
on anybody that goes against him. So like, you got to be careful with that. The character's almost becoming too powerful.
We glossed over it, and I think we got everything we could out of it, but I so enjoyed his interactions where he was basically on like the soccer version of Sports Center.
Pondiff or whatever. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And literally every time he said anything, he would cut back to the lead guy being like, once again, we have to apologize for the words said by Roy Kent.
And then it would just cut back to him and he'd be staring that evil stare at him. I loved it. I was honestly sad to see that part go away so quickly, but
agreed. But like, I think that it's better that they got those laughs out of it, and now we're moving on to the next phase with this character. It could have gotten really stale if they let that linger for too long.
And again, you got to speak volumes for Keeley's character because she's the one that talked him into doing that. But when she sees him come on the field as a coach at the end of the last episode, she's really, really happy for him. And that's another reason that you like her so much, is that she likes seeing the people she cares about doing well, doing something they love.
Her character, more than maybe even Rebecca's character, I think, went from being unlikable to extremely likable. Like, I don't know. It wasn't.
I always enjoyed her. I thought she was nice in the first season, but
I recall her just being like I think my first impressions of her was just that she was essentially a gold digger. Like, that was like basically her whole character until you got to know her.
I feel like in like the third or fourth episode in season 1, she started helping Rebecca out a little bit more.
Oh yeah, but it's grown since then for sure. But that relationship with Rebecca has definitely gotten her to places that she would not have otherwise been able to achieve on her own merit, I think. Under this, at least in that amount of time.
That's the premise of all the characters not named Vincent Chase and Entourage. So
that's completely fair. 100% completely fair. But unless you have anything else profound to say, that is all I have on Ted Lasso. Richie, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Just, one last time, like you said, if you haven't watched this, just watch it. It will literally put you in a good mood. I can't stress enough that how important I feel like this show is for our modern day and age. And like, your life will go on whether you watch it or not, because it's a TV show. I get that, but like there's just,
you'll probably feel better if you make the choice to watch it.
You will genuinely feel better. And I've had Miles and myself singing this for the last week. I've had people at work singing this for the last week. He's here, he's there, he's every fucking where. Roy Kent. Roy Kent. And thank you for that, because that will now be stuck in all of your heads for the rest of the day. But yeah, just I can't stress enough how great I think the show is. And I even follow the Ted Lasso Twitter, and I don't really get on Twitter at all.
I was literally going to encourage you guys, if you're listening to this, talk to us about Ted Lasso, because I feel like this is going to be the only way we actually get Richie on Twitter. Like, he has an account, but like barely.
But like the Ted Lasso Twitter, it's literally like I read all the posts in Ted Lasso's
in his voice, yeah.
And like they're so like positive all the time. And we didn't even get to talk about who did he mention in the one episode that he'd go on a date with? Somebody that he tweeted about, or that he said he would go on a date with, is a much older woman. The woman in real life actually like responded on Twitter with like, "Oh, hey, let's go." And like this character is becoming so much bigger than the show. And I think that's so cool. And seeing everybody's positive reactions to the show. There's the whole bit where Jason reached out to a writer that he had done an interview with that was going through a tough time with the loss of a family member, I think. And Jason responded in such a Ted Lasso way that endeared him to all of his fans even more. And it's like, it seems like it's having an impact in the most positive way possible. And like, at the end of the day, that's the coolest thing about it, man.
I completely agree, man. It is a very uplifting show, and something that I definitely think more people will have, if nothing else, a better half hour of your day if you experience it. Or, however much you get to read Ted Lasso's Twitter, that too. But yeah. that's going to do it for this week's Best Darn Everything. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening and downloading, sharing, liking, subscribing, all of the stuff that we ask you to do for listening to podcasts nowadays. Please make sure you go and talk all of your Ted Lasso thoughts directly to Richie the Wiz Kid. He is on Twitter at the Wiz_Kid23.
And when you do that, I will wait for Miles to tell me that people are hitting me up on Twitter and I need to get on there. So make sure that you tag Miles as well at Mr. Most Days Off so that he can inform me to get on there. But most importantly,
because notifications aren't a thing.
No. I mean, when they happen constantly, you got to turn most of them off. You can also follow Miles at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. I didn't turn the Twitter notifications off.
All right. Well, next week we're going to be back. We'll probably be reviewing another episode of The Simpsons. I believe on deck we have The Last Tap Dance in Springfield.
But when you're not watching The Simpsons, football is life.
And until next time, Jamie Tart doot 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 doot. Jamie Tart doot 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 doot.